Well, good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, qualifying day here in Grants Pass, Oregon for the Rogue River Open. Had a good night's sleep, got a good breakfast in me, and now I'm just out here kind of relaxing a little bit. We got about 16 minutes or so before check-in, so I'm actually going for a little bit of a walk just to help calm myself down and just relax and kind of enjoy the environment. Now, last year when I bowled this tournament, it was my first PBA regional, and I was very nervous. And those nerves really shot me in the foot because the first 3 games, my nerves were so bad that I couldn't control it, and I got myself into a deep hole. And then the rest of the time actually didn't go too bad. Had a couple good 200 games in there, ended up averaging over the last 4 games in the 190s. So once my nerves settled down, everything went great. So this year, I'm trying to get my nerves under control right out the gate. So I'm just out here walking around Grants Pass, Oregon. Just strolling down the street, enjoying the weather. So far the weather has been pretty nice. It was actually supposed to snow a lot last night and it missed us. Everything stayed north by Portland area, so that's good. Hopefully it stays that way because it's a very long drive out of here on some very remote roads. And the last thing I want to do on the way out is run into a lot of heavy snow. But last night in practice, I had a few good looks. My urethane was looking pretty good. I've got 2 different urethane balls from Swag recently. The Big Bro Burn Up LE limited edition. I've got one drilled with the pin near my middle finger, or my ring finger, sorry, and then I've got a second one with the pin quite a bit above that. So I've got one essentially for fresh control, and then the other one I've got as a ball to go to when the other one's starting to hook too early. So my game plan is to stay with urethane as much as I can, obviously on the fresh. I'm hoping I can make urethane work and score well with it through game 3, maybe 4, and then depending on how the field's playing the pattern, I think you're going to have to make a big move left, a couple zones maybe, get in near, third arrow. We are bowling on the new Cheetah, 35 feet, 30 mils of oil. If you can get your ball out to about 2 to 3 at the break point, maybe 4, you can shape it. Overall, I think I've got a really good game plan. I was able to eliminate some equipment last night in practice. Of course, you have to keep in mind, practice always plays different than the actual tournament. The PBA 50 part of this tournament, the cut was right around plus 50. So our cut in the open division is probably going to be, I would estimate, anywhere from 30 to 40 pins higher than that, probably right around plus 100. So we definitely have to put together some good games. I'm going to get inside, get stretched out, and then get ready for practice. Wish me luck, everybody. All right, the beginning of the Rogue River run. Well guys, I'm back at home. I waited till I got home to do my summary of how the tournament went just because I was really frustrated with myself after the tournament. You know, overall, this year's tournament went about the same as last year's tournament in the United Grants Pass. I averaged in the 180s last year. I averaged in the high 170s this year overall. I need to do better. It's just that simple. You know, I started really strong. My game plan was a good game plan, starting with urethane and trying to make it work as long as possible. That first pair I was on, 23 and 24, the end pair, they played really well. You know, they played as I would expect them to play with the cheetah. You know, as long as I got it out to about the 2 to 3 board area and my angles were right, I could shape it all day long. And I started with a 199. So after game 1, I was -1. I felt really good about that. Well, then came time for game 2. So we jumped 2 pairs. Instead of going down to 1 and 2, we skipped all the way to 3 and 4. And 3 and 4 just did not play the same. And this is really the biggest thing that you have to deal with when you're out here on these professional tournaments. You know, when you're bowling in a house that you're not familiar with, there's all kinds of different variables and factors. There's all kinds of different variables that factor into how the pattern is going to play. So we went down to 3 and 4. I didn't have any idea who I was following at that point, so I didn't know about the rev rate, what they were throwing, or anything yet. But went down to 3 and 4, and my first shot out the gate, the ball did not hook off of 2. And I basically was standing in the same spot and targeting the same area of the lane, just like I did on 23 and 24. Beautiful shot. The ball just, it basically never read the lane. It never slowed down. It acted like it just hit a puddle of oil and just kept going. So it went through the middle of the rack, and I left a nasty split, you know. So I was like, huh, that was weird. So my next shot on the right lane, I got up to throw it, and it did more or less the exact same thing. It did have a little bit more hook, but not the amount of hook that I was expecting bowling on the cheetah. So then it came time to decide, what are we going to do? You know, do I try to stay with urethane, move around a little bit, maybe adjust my break point, maybe move right, move left, and just see what we can do? Or do we go to reactive? So I spent the next 2 frames throwing my urethane ball, trying to get it lined up. Actually, it was about 4 frames. So now we're in the middle of the game at this point. You know, I moved a little bit to the left, tried to move everything left with the break point because the cheetah is a very short pattern. So if everything moves left, it should shape more, right? That didn't happen. It just basically, you know, never slowed down, never turned the corner on both lanes. So I went 4 frames doing that just to make sure I was making good shots. And I figured at that point, well, if I move everything left and it's not shaping, then we need to be out of urethane at this point and go to reactive. Now, my urethane balls were sanded. I had one ball at 500 grit. I had my transition urethane ball at 2000 grit. Tried them both. Neither of them wanted to do anything. So instead of going one step further and moving everything back to the right and trying to square everything up to give the ball a chance, or maybe trying to slow my speed down, I decided to grab a reactive ball and try and line up with the reactive ball. That reactive ball I grabbed was actually a newer release from Swag right before I had left, which is the Buzzer Beater Solid. If you remember, several months ago we came out with the Buzzer Beater Pearl, which was a ball that we created for high rev, two-handed, and thumbless bowlers. High rev thumb bowlers as well. Overall, it's a great ball, great reaction, very controllable, except the solid version of this ball hooks at least 10 boards more than the Pearl version. So I grabbed that ball with the intention of, okay, this ball should give me control over the pocket, and since it's reactive and it's asymmetric, it should hook, right? Because the way everything was acting is it's just tons of oil. So I made an adjustment. I moved to zone left, and my first shot out to the 2-3 board area with that ball didn't look terrible. The only problem was the break point was very, very sharp. Now, I did have this ball sanded to 1000. You know, I didn't want to go any lower than that, and I was kind of shocked about how sharp the break point was, but it was to the point where I could get some reaction off it. So I decided to try and stay with that the rest of the game and just get lined up, and it didn't go well. You know, unfortunately, I couldn't get it lined up very well, and I kept throwing nasty splits, and of course, that started weighing heavy on my mental game. And so when I would leave myself a spare that I should be easily making, I was missing them. Just because at that point, my mind was so full of everything else going on, you know, trying to line up with the reactive ball, trying to throw good shots, the stress of, you know, coming off a good game of 199 and then having this bad game going on. You know, I'm halfway through this game and I'm in the one, you know, barely 100 pins at that point. So it's like, you know what, this is so frustrating. I tried to get it out of control. You know, I stayed in my process. It just didn't work. So that game 2, I ended up shooting a 132. You know, it is what it is. You either have to put up and shut up at that point and try and overcome it, or you'd give up. One thing I can say is I did not give up. I did the best I could to overcome it. In the rest of the games that I had, I just couldn't do it. I ended up going back to my urethane balls for games 3, 4, and 5. And then finally in game 6, because the urethane balls, yes, I could get my score a lot higher, you know, up into the 170s, 180s, but it just seemed like I couldn't get above where I needed to get, you know, above that 200 to make up for that 132 game that I had shot. So in game 6, I switched to my Incredible Hero Pearl asymmetric ball, fairly strong cover, pretty strong core, and I had it sanded at 1,000. And, you know, I decided to move way in and just shape the whole lane. And it worked great because game 6, I shot 232. Now, unfortunately, at that point, I was already so low that the 232 really didn't matter. You know, you're coming off of a 132 and then a 170 something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then a 170 something. So at this point, we're already well below 100. So even though I shot 232, it's kind of one of those situations like, well, you know, if I don't shoot back-to-back 250s at least for the last 2 remaining games, there's no way I'm making this cut. So you've got that on your mind, you know. The biggest problem that I had throughout the remainder of the day after that second game was spares. Honestly, I knew my spare ball was going to probably hook a lot more than I'm used to because you're bowling on such a short oil pattern. But going into this tournament, what I practiced a ton was staying behind the ball and rolling it forward as much as I could whenever I had a single pin spare. And I just couldn't get the ball out of my hand right. You know, for some reason, I kept turning it just a little bit. And just like I tell you guys in my videos, as a two-hander, you have to be really good at rolling the ball forward for your spares, because if you don't, it's going to hook. And the shorter the pattern, the more it's going to hook. And there's no real way to adjust for that. So it just could not come out of my hand the right way, and I kept having a little bit of rotation. It was those scenarios where, let's say you throw out a 10-pin, you throw out the 10-pin and the ball goes down the lane, it gets about 3/4 of the way there, and then all of a sudden it just starts to hook a little bit, and you're like, please go, and all of a sudden it turns, and you miss the 10-pin by literally like 1/4 of a board. It was that type of stuff. So, of course, when that happens, it's just driving you crazy up in your brain, because then you get frustrated, because you're like, you know, I can't seem to get it out of my hand any straighter than that. So then you try to increase your ball speed, right, to get the spare ball to the pin a lot faster. Well, then that throws everything else to the window, because you're not, at that point, used to throwing at spares a lot faster. So then I was dumping my spare ball on the gutter and then making tugs on it because my timing was off. And overall, I can say that my performance as far as shooting the right lines and getting the ball to the pocket was really good over the tournament, except for game 2, where I really struggled to get to the pocket. The rest of the games, I could get to the pocket. You know, on occasion, I'd make a bad shot, miss a little right too far, or tug it in a little bit too much. But I was getting to the pocket consistently. My spare game was horrific. You know, I averaged in the high 170s, mid 180s this last tournament in Grants Pass. Had I had all my spares, I could have easily been in the high 190s, maybe even close to 200 even. Now, granted, that probably still would have not have gotten me into the tournament, because the cut ended up being plus 115 or 120, somewhere around there. So it wasn't really, really high, but it was up there. You know, it took an average of about 2 teen to make it. So over the last several weeks, I've been working closely on my spare game, really, really focusing on it. You know, spending 2 to 3 games at the bowling alley just focused on spares and spares only, because I can hook the ball, I can strike, I can play different lines. I know I can. I'm pretty good at that. I'm getting better at that. I need to get my spare game where it needs to be. The other thing I'm doing is I'm working really closely with my coach. It's been a while since I've had some lessons with him, so I need to have some more lessons with him and basically have some follow-ups and, you know, let him know, here's the struggles I'm having. Here's what I think I need to overcome. Can you help me overcome that? And one of the things I really, really am going to focus on as I get ready for my next tournament in Puyallup, Washington here in about 3 weeks, I believe, 4 weeks, is my swing. Because I know my swing's behind my back or behind my head to the inside of my head, let's say, a lot more than it should be. Now, a little bit inside the head, it's not necessarily an issue. But, you know, as I've been watching more and more of my tournament vlogs and videos that I'm creating, recordings that I'm taking, I'm noticing that it's kind of getting back to the point where it's really inside my head. We're talking, you know, a ball and a half to 2 balls width inside my head, and that's not good, because that's great if you want to project the ball to the right and play a lot of angle, but if you're trying to play straight up the boards, it becomes really difficult and inconsistent to repeat shots. So I'm working with my coach to get that corrected. I'm going to get it corrected as best I can, and then we're going to hit Puyallup, Washington hard, hopefully here in about a month. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video today. please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share the video, and I will see you guys in the next video.